Welcome John, Gracie, Stephanie, and Jen to class today. Today we are going to learn about the book The Challenge of Library Management, Leading with Emotional Concept, with the three main principles that I thought were important. 1. Change resistance and how to combat it. 2. Know about organizational culture. And 3. How to have an empowered environment. Why do managers think that employees resist change? There are several different reasons laid out in the book. One of them is parochial self-interest perspective. This is where the employer doesn't trust the employee, and it's based out of the belief that employees are resistant to change based solely out of self-interest and care little about the success of the organization. Managers who think this way are very judgmental, distrusting, and critical of their own employees, and these managers are sometimes the reason employees are resistant to change. The second perspective that is discussed revolves around the belief that managers believe that employees simply misunderstand the reason for the change, and this is what leads them to resist change. Managers believe that the solution is just communicating more and trying to communicate with different words. But merely communicating without receiving staff input will not change the negative view that employees have of the future change. And the third perspective that is discussed, that why employees resist change, is the different assessments perspective. And this rests on the belief that not every employee will agree with what the change manager communicates as the benefits or advantages of change. This often develops into the misunderstanding perspective because many managers believe that their change initiative is the only correct solution, and they don't think what employees say is important. And another change-resistant perspective attributes resistance to an individual having a low tolerance to change. This rests on the foundation that some employees have higher security needs than other employees, and the only way to achieve change is to address the security needs of these employees. And the last perspective why managers believe that employees resist change is the competing commitment to change perspective. This theory says that the reason why employees resist change is because they have competing commitments and values toward the proposed change, which act collectively to create change resistance. An example that the book discusses with this theory is a library purchasing graphic novels for the first time, while some staff, such as in tech services, believe they are not appropriate for a library collection. Here, open-minded, engaged communication can help overcome the change resistance. It is important for the leaders of the change to identify the unofficial leaders. This is how change managers can combat change resistance. These unofficial leaders are called grassroots leaders. The library manager, or whoever is leading the change, should engage with them as part of the change initiation process. This engagement must be done in a deliberately casual manner, such as calling the select individual to the office but in a way that is an invitation, so they don't think they are in trouble. So an example would be telling an employee they seek their opinion or need some input, just something very casual so it doesn't look forced. And the change leader should offer basic hospitality in the office. Make it super casual. We'll give them coffee, tea, water, and some toys to play with. If they like playing with their hands, just make them super comfortable as they give their It is very important to project sincerity and appreciation for the individual's contribution. Because if the employee feels that they genuinely are giving input and will be looked at seriously, this will decrease change resistance, and the grassroots leaders can tell others about this experience, and it will just be a better situation for everyone. And once decisions have been reached, they should be communicated as soon as possible. Leaders should focus on helping others follow the rationale and coming to the conclusion they did, and open the door for feedback that might contribute to a different conclusion in the future. So if a manager says they have an open door policy, you need to really make sure to have an open door policy and actually listen to the input that staff brings forth. It is very important for emotional stability of the employees. And combating change resistance is important for change to be successful. As you can see from this graph, showing this example from a 2006 survey that is given in the book, the mood expressed about change directly affects how successful a project is. And if the majority of staff is anxious, the successful project percentage was 44%, and unsuccessful was 51%. And that's about 50-50, but more unsuccessful and better to see results than about 50-50. So I want to help staff not be anxious. And then it gets worse. Staff are confused. Successful projects are only at 22%, and unsuccessful is 43%. So it is very important to be emotionally engaged with employees and make sure they are not confused. And the similar results occur with frustration. When staff are frustrated, successful projects are only 23% and unsuccessful projects are 40%. If you feel frustrated, it is difficult to do your best for a change initiative that you feel frustrated about, and it will not be successful. So managers need to minimize frustration and try to have staff give input and work together. Communication is key. And same with fatigue. If staff fatigue, successful projects are 24%, unsuccessful are 30%. And if staff just merely feel resistant, successful was 24%, unsuccessful was 28%. So these are both very low. This is why emotional engagement is so important. Because when managers feel empathy with their employees, everyone can work together in two-way communication and make a change initiative successful. And organization. The second point I want to make about this is the existence of organizational culture and how important it is. Because culture affects change, change affects culture. So I'm going to explain what it is, and you'll see why it is so important. Because if managers understand culture, they will be better able to break culture and be able to communicate with staff about the different beliefs and values and rituals. And there's 3 types of organizational culture. Individual, where an employee wants to meet the wishes of their boss, and a group level, where there's a relationship among employees who need to formulate a group identity. And there's also the organizational, which establishes purpose, organization, and assessment, and accomplishing set goals in the organization. There are 5 elements that drive organizational culture. There is the organizational environment, which is the manner in which the organization has to be responsive to the external environment, and generally is the most influential element. An example is how an organization responds to electronic books. The second element is organizational cultural values, which are the fundamental concepts and beliefs of an organization that are directly related to the established standards of achievement for employees within the organization. These are values that define for the employees if the organization is successful or not. An example of a value can be meeting needs of users, which can be compromised after a change, such as a decrease in hours for staff, which can lead to frustration. The third element is organizational heroes. These are employees who embody the cultural values of the organization and who can act as role models for other employees within the organization. This can be negative or positive for a change leader, depending if the employee agrees with the change. This is why change leaders should work with grassroots leaders to minimize change resistance. I immediately think of my workplace because the youth services manager has been there for a very long time, so she seems to be an organizational hero, and several people respect her more than the building manager. So building manager having a close tie with this organizational hero is very important for receiving full staff collaboration. And the fourth element that drives organizational culture is organizational rites and rituals, which are the systematic and normal routine of everyday life in the organization, such as the scheduling of lunch breaks, disruption of routine without justification in an organization. An example the book gives is that one department has a scheduled lunch while another department takes a lunch whenever, and this is unfair, so staff will also be frustrated. So when one ritual is different from another department, there might need to be some communication initiated. And the fifth element that drives organizational culture is the organizational cultural network, sometimes called hearing it through the grapevine. This is an informal means of communication that takes place within the organization. Some managers view this network negative because it could be construed as gossiping. But some managers view it as positive, because depending on what the employees are discussing, it could lead to support for change if incorrect information isn't being spread. There are 4 types of organizational culture. person, task, power, and role. Person culture is where the employees see themselves as the fundamental positions in the organization, and the organizational structure exists only to support. Performance of work is hindered because individuals feel little, if any, loyalty to the organization. Oftentimes, a staff member may feel entitled to do whatever they want because they don't care about the overall mission of the organization. And task culture is where employees are job or project oriented. Employers here bring the best and qualified and highly motivated together to get a task done. But projects can arise when members of the group are competitive, or if some feel that their task isn't as important as other employees' tasks in other departments. So it can be good, but it can also be negative if all the staff isn't getting along. There's also power culture, which depends on a centralized power leader for the organization to succeed. A charismatic leader responds quickly, decisively, and unilaterally with the best intentions for the organization in mind. This culture can become dysfunctional, though, if the change leader isn't like this, and he or she is dictatorial and uses threats to defend decisions. And the last type of organizational culture is role. Role culture is where organizations are highly structured and the employees are given clear, well-articulated objectives, goals, and procedures by their supervisor. And these employees are evaluated and rewarded on how well they meet these objectives and goals. The negative aspect of this culture is that it can create an organization full of employees who simply follow the rules and don't know what happens outside their assigned area. So if someone had to take over in another department, if someone was sick, they would not know what to do. And when a change leader understands the type of culture that exists in a workplace, they can better empathize with the employees and help them to resist change. And the third point I want to make about this book is how to have an empowered environment. For an empowered environment to exist, an employee's position or role must have two key components. One of them is core expectations of the basic job description that an employee must accomplish. So employees must know what they are expected to do. But the second component is job flexibility, so that employees can use their competence and interest to move things forward. So an employee should have set objectives to do for the position, but they should also be given the means to be creative and give input for other projects and how to move those two are very important for empowerment. And employees must see impact of their comments through changes in the implementation process. This is what real empowerment looks like. It gives employees the freedom to actually make decisions, like I said, to see impact of those decisions. And an example of an empowerment tool is a change leader, providing tools such as floor plans, furniture cutouts, floor planning, software training, or even a sample desk configuration setup to help employees design the space according to the workflow needs. If the layout of a workplace is going to change, giving an employee who works in this area all these resources to help give input is very meaningful, and their emotions be very positive. And change leaders should encourage dialogue with staff by asking open-ended questions such as these during the change, such as, what do you think is going right in the way we are implementing the project? What do you think is a problem in the way we are implementing the project? What concerns or issues do you have about the project? What do you think about the progress you're making? What do you think will be the biggest challenge or barrier to the project's success? And why do you think the initiative will or will not work? As you can see, these questions can be very impactful, so there must be a huge trust relationship with the staff and the change leader. Because if a change leader asks the staff, what do you think is a problem? And then employees said what they thought, and then the manager said, that's not a problem. That is shutting down any input. So open communication is the key here. But that would ruin any engagement that we have here. And also make sure to evaluate yourself to make sure you are creating an empowered workplace. Assess yourself as a leader by asking a peer manager, or maybe even yourself, if you can be honest with yourself. Ask questions to find out if you were a leader who is creating an empowerment workplace. Ask yourself, how did I do as a leader for this change initiative? What did I do well? What did I do poorly? What can I do to improve next time? It would be best if you can find someone other than yourself, maybe a manager with the same status as yours that can be very open with you and not be afraid of any questions. So openness and communication is also the key. So asking staff questions and yourself questions creates an empowered environment because everyone's evaluating each other and trying to help each other out. And emotions should be positive. And an important point I want to make about an empowered environment is that change leaders make sure that change isn't implemented in waves. It is important for leaders of major change initiatives to realize the importance of laying out an entire large change picture at the start, rather than get through one change, only to announce another the next day. Ongoing, continuous, small or mid-level changes are harder on staff from an emotional perspective than having their entire workplace go through an upheaval. This is because with the continuous change, there is never the opportunity to actually get one's feet under one and establish a foundation one can build on professionally. Instead, like being in ocean, one is pushed over time and again as each wave keeps rolling in, like this picture that is shown here. And if every time you went to work there's another change, imagine how you will feel. You will feel fatigued, frustrated, and all of those emotions, like that previous graph in the slideshow showing that change was not successful. Staff overall had those emotions. And looking back to our class 801, Foundations of Library Science. Rubin said that what makes library and information science attractive as a profession is not merely satisfying information needs, but caring about people, solving human problems, and improving lives. And the point I want to make here is that good change initiatives want to improve lives in the library. Like this kid here, she's learning how to use a computer to find an item, the kid's catalog, and that didn't exist years ago. So a change in initiative had to occur. And maybe really satisfying information, but finding the information she needs may improve her life. Perhaps she's looking for a cookbook, or to make her mom a surprise cake. Just never know. But and it is also important to improve lives of people at work. That's what this quote also made me think of. When change managers see this quote, rather than only caring about patrons, they should also care about staff and improve their lives as well. And engaging them emotionally with two-way communication and receiving input and helping resist change by just working together and implementing what staff gives us ideas, and this improves their lives too, because the workplace is happier and there is less stress. So I recommend everyone to challenge a library reading with emotional engagement. If you're going to be a department manager or a project leader or anything where you will be in charge of several. But the main point here is communication and having empathy with the people you are in charge of. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation, the handout I have given you. Please let me know if you have any questions, and thank you for your time.